so let's go over the system. We're going to start with a water source. And I'll draw it over here. This is my system, nothing to do with the Giza pyramid, okay? Our water source is going to enter into the system at X elevation. And just for the heck of it, we're going to call X elevation right here. Okay? Right there. Our system, the elevation is going to enter, and we're going to model our system very loosely off the Great Giza Pyramid. Is going to be right there. That's going to be the water level right there, kind of where this break is in the rock. It actually looks like that break right there would probably be where we're going to have the water level. So when we do this, that's going to enter into the system. Now from here, we can worry about exactly what occurs, but we're going to look at the water level and water tension. On this side, at that same elevation, where the I'm going to draw this the best I can. Let's see, we have a floor line. The floor line, the floor line of the hallway down here is just above that, about 6 inches. In fact, when you go over into the area, where's my other map? My big map. When we work our way over, and again, these these things are so horrible because they miss pieces. The floor line here drops down about another 16, 20 inches. Okay, so there's a pool over there. When you look at the step of the pool, there's, if I draw the step right here, there's a mark that comes over and then swings down. This here is that same line there. So the water level would be where it rides just below it. But since the way it fills and our fill spout and our air spout are actually below the water line, it will make it so the water's outside will only saturate up to that mark. Okay? They will. That's just, well, they would if this was a perfectly closed system. In reality, they're going to fill up to marry it. But because we're going to put a pressure bubble in there, the way the gases have to come up, back into that chamber, down around the edge, and then back out, we put a resistance in there. We're going to model it exactly the same way they did, exactly the same way. Because it's perfect, we don't have to change anything. In fact, my goal is to actually get a model and show that it has function. It's going to give us a yield that might surprise us. Anyway, this is going to add a resistance factor for the gas that we're going to be releasing. Okay, we're just going to, for our experiment, we're just going to put like a concentrator down on this one, so it's pumping out as pure oxygen as possible, so we get the most truest reaction. And we can go over my subterranean videos there, but we're just looking at the surface level here. Now, on the top part of the system, this water is being pushed down, but the zero factor, without all the other pressures being given, is that would be the zero mark. And we're going to add pressure to this water, which by proxy would lift the waters in the system. So for water likes to find its own level even under a little bit of pressure. So we're going to have some play there. Now exactly what's going to occur? We're going to complicate it. Because up on the top, where we're taking the hydrogen that comes out of the grotto, the part right there, let me get rid of this drawing here, comes out of the grotto and goes out of the holes that are drilled in the southern wall. Now they do say holes. One of the holes is the up vent for the hydrogen, which comes up above into the area that I call the relieving chambers. Their words, not mine. Where they find the seeds and the cells and the dust, which is just evidence that the updraft was strong enough that I would bring bug carcasses and stuff out of the natural water, that this whole thing is fed from the natural water from the Nile River. Actually, I think it's fed from a spring, and the bugs in the season stuff might just be stuff that falls onto it because it was probably an open aquifer like the California aquifer. But these are details that we can honestly bicker about because the details don't matter. It's the function of what's occurring, which is very hard to dismiss once you see it. Now up top, when we bring it in, we're going to bring it down below the floor line in the back corner of the king's chamber where it looks like rock, but if you walk back there and step on it, it's obviously metal. There's a hole about 3 meters deep, 10 feet, whatever you want to call it. And down there is some actually brickwork. Now we can get into, people will say that I thought the brickwork showed evidence that somebody dug through, and probably because it was sand like it was when they drilled the hole down here, they patched it back up so they didn't have a fall of sand. But when you watch the video from that 18-year-old that climbs the Great Giza Pyramid, and I have his email address, and if somebody wants to support the guy $50, he'll give us his video, but I just don't have the money. You can do that as a donation. Get the video, buy the video, get the video for yourself, for your own interest. Give me a copy, because once you own it, right? Okay? So, anyway, when he climbs the pyramid, you can obviously see brick within the side of the structure. So no one's going to go up there patching holes. They're there for a reason. And when we get into the communication, I think we're going to find them as like end of file markers. But that's my delusion, and I'm still working with it. Up at the top, the gas is brought in, and when you look at the third structure, where do I have the third structure drawn? When you look at the third structure, the gas is going to come in at the same elevation as the bottom of the second tier, okay? And where it goes, it's the liquid is maintained as the bottom of the conduit that goes down. Where the switch is, we'll talk about that, is the top of that conduit goes down, and where the gas comes into the upper section, like I was talking about, is where this edge meets the outside conduit. It's all those elevations. Believe me, there's no communication here, and once you understand what they were talking about, you won't see it later. Just like Braille means nothing. Roman numerals, forget those things. Even Morse code, just noise, All right, so pressure, water. This water is all under pressure. We're breaking into its hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen's coming out, doing some work as it does it. We talked in the lower section thing how as it comes out, it does that step in the bubble, creates that water hammer that John Cadman gets all excited about. Hydrogen comes out of here, goes up to the top, comes down, comes through that hole in the bottom. Why is the hole in the bottom? Because that had to be prepped with some liquid. It could have just been water to start off with, because this whole thing is going to feed itself. So it could have just been water, and that's a flashback arrestor. Comes into the room, fills the room. Ambient air from outside comes through the one and only conduit that's open to the outside world. This one right here. Static. Where did static come from? Well, static electricity. This thing is like a big Van de Graaff generator. We're going to build it just like a big Van de Graaff generator. It is purposely designed with a sweeping pattern to coax and quarantine that static electricity to the surface, the topper, up 2/3, 1/3 kind of, 2/3 of the structure. In my opinion, kind of like a pocket here when you look at it. And it is designed not to vent it off the top. That is why there is nothing up there except for before we put a grounding cord. They had a little wooden structure there to vent that nasty static electricity off the top, and so that people didn't realize their hair was standing on the end, like they were standing on a big Van de Graaff generator. They forbid people from climbing up it until this day, unless you pay a bunch of money, you ain't climbing up there, or you're donating to the UN or something like that. But anyway, the way this is engineered, I told you there was the water level it's maintained at. That is where, and I'm overdrawing the size of this. This is the entrance, and over here is the other conduit. The water level is maintained right about there, so that it is choking off this conduit and riding where, when you look down, you kind of have that shape, and this is the conduit going up, okay? That is so, as the liquid rises, it's going to choke off the both fuels, the oxygen from the air, which I guess is technically a corrosive, and the fuel is the hydrogen, which is coming up from down there. Gas, hydrogen is a gas, it goes up, okay? Hydrogen is a gas, it goes up. Oxygen is heavy, it goes down. Respective to each other's. Now, within here, this particular, if you look at it, it's an inset square that this kind of pokes out just enough that this is asking this room, which is perfectly squared, and we're going to talk about how the water gets to that elevation, because down the hallway here where it goes, there's actually a retaining wall that we have burst out, and you've got the bit up there, and this is the antechamber, okay, and it goes to the grand gallery over here. This is also a switch because this water is maintained at that level, and you're going to have precipitation, which is why when you look at the back of here, it looks like there was like a little trough on there, which actually separated it, because you're going to have two flows. We're going to get into all this. We're going to have two flows of liquid coming down, and because they're going to be at different energy states when we get into all the static electricity, once in a while you're going to have a Lord Kelvin drip generator spark. Now, with the gases involved, that spark is what causes the blow, that you can see the damage on there, which blow out into the grand gallery, forcing the gases down in the system. Now, it's not just going to be just gases, because like I said, this is a precipitation room. In fact, I should probably change it to a precipitation room and call the condensation room is actually going to migrate, because I got to give everything a name. This is going to be the condensation room, because this is really more condensation. This is more precipitation, because this is going to be very wet and drippy, and there's no dripping and wetting here. I don't think there's any reactions. This is a very stagnant reaction on this side, but we're going to get to that side later in a minute. So this is the precipitation room. The steam, when you burn oxygen and hydrogen together, you get vapor, water vapor, okay? It comes out, it's going to work whenever there's pressure to blow itself out this way, because there's nothing resisting it there, or less of a resistance there than here, where you have the weight of Mother Nature pushing against you. The weight being the oxygen and the nitrogen in comparison to the hydrogen. But when it all happens, this is the way it's going to bubble, and then the water is going to reseal it back up, because the water level is riding right at above that lip line. So it's going to allow the gases to push up into there, which from there they will start to condense and flow down. Now this will all make a wonderful river in the sky, which will be the conduit that the static electricity will focus on, or it will design to be focused on, to create this river in the sky. But as all this is occurring, all the condensation is occurring, the atmosphere in here will become less than ambient, less than natural 14.1 foot-pounds per square inch, less than 1 atmospheric pressure, it'll be a vacuum, okay? It'll be a slight vacuum, but a vacuum, which this whole thing is floating like a air table, a laser air table. The vacuum here will now raise the water level in this room. Now this is an abnormal raising, and when it does that, as the water level in here is raising in elevation, there is a spillway right at the end here, so it will be spilling off. That's just, 101. But, well, here's the problem I have is, I don't think the weight of the water can be overcome by the air that easy. This is where it needs to be modeled, because I believe they keep raising the water level as they keep cutting out gases, which is why this room has 3 steps in it back there before the bit where the actually the air comes down around the whole edge and out. That's more communication, but what's going to occur in here is this is a less than normal atmosphere. The water is under pressure as it wants to equalize, and I don't know if we're actually going to get it to go higher in elevation, but we can see scarring on the side of the thing that the water level within it was obviously about halfway up, which would coincide with the top of the rails on the side, where it would spill over into the uppermost bit and down. But we'll get into it when we let's break this apart. That area there where it joined together, and I don't think I could draw it really quickly out of the top of my head. But anyway, there's the bit they broke into. That bit, when you look at it, there's a bump right in front of it. That bump in elevation is going to coincide with this side here. That's the highest bump of elevation. We'll get in because it's a gate, like a lock system, like a water lock. That will allow the heaviest of heavy water that settles into here not to get into there. The heaviest of heavy waters will actually work their way down into the system because they want to not have them up here. They're toying with skewing the averages of nature in their favor to get a result. And we can bicker over the result, but I just want you to look at the system, watch the system. And that right there is a pressure gate, so that heavy water, while it fills in here and it may cusp that edge, it does not get into the rest of the system. It does not pollute the internal system. It goes down to the lower system where it's broken and does it again, because it's actually the statistical higher average of having what they're looking for, which, well, what we're looking for, I'm building this, what we're looking for, we're gonna take heavy water, we're gonna break it and break it and break it and break it to make it heavy water, and we're gonna break it and break it and break it and break it more, because there's another level that we're looking for. In fact, the way I was getting into how this is designed, there's along the bit that goes up, okay, they broke into this area. All right, so let's just say they broke into that area. In this, which would have looked just like every other well, it had a lower bottom. You can, well, I don't have photos because everything is through gates and stuff, so we got to look at the drawings. That would have gone down, but then it would have gone down another 2 or 3 inches, and would have, but the wall on the side away from the edge, not good at drawing things in 3D, is going to be a little bit lower. It comes up, it's going to have like a little J-hook. Everything is squared in there, except for there's going to be a spillway that goes down to a second bucket, which is lower. That bucket actually feeds from outside of the structure. You see where it creeps up the edge? There's a spillway that goes down in. So as soon as the liquid within this fills, it'll spill down, but there's another liquid on top of it, and that liquid is what spills into here and down. This keeps the, this fills here, but this spills into there, and this is all under. This is what they broke into looking for their magic secret. And there's a conduit that comes from below the level of the tooth. I'm going to call it the tooth, the hump, you know, and comes up and actually spills right above the level of the water there. Now, and then this spills into here, which then would spill out. Now, what this is doing is you got to look at if you have like oil and water and vinegar and I don't know, something else that floats on top of that. You have one density which is not supposed to, oh, and then this, when you look at the tooth, the back corner, where it comes out, it can spill, once it breaches this elevation, it can spill into here, but that tooth meets it just after that. So that this liquid will not spill into there, but this liquid can spill into the into what they call the spillway, the well head, the whatever, the grotto, northern grotto top entrance. the heavier liquid will spill into there, out of the system. Whatever's saturated in here doesn't matter. That liquid, if we put some mercury in there, it'll fill up, go over, spill down. It will not spill into here. Okay, visualize that. If we then stop filling the mercury, and then, just as an example, fill mercury into here, it's going to fill up, and then it'll spill into here and down. But it won't mix with that. So if we had like red mercury and silver mercury, we could demonstrate that. Of course, mercury is expensive, not expensive as heavy water, but still, we're playing with densities of real stuff here. Now, the next stage is as it goes up. Once it reaches the elevation of the bottom, or it will be at either the bottom or just above the bottom of that, along the wall, and this is, I wish I had a photo, but I don't. You can go to photos.greatgizapyramid.com and find the photo I'm talking about. You can see as it comes up the wall, there's a bit where you can see where they broke through the rock, where it would have come over and gone somewhere. You can see that there's a break there. Now, you can start, I don't want to mislead anybody by going to blueprint. It's either blueprint or blueprints. I'm going to have it as both. .greatgizapyramid.com. This guy named JD in Canada, and he really uncovered the beginnings of something. He doesn't expand on it, but on my website, I will create a smart link. In fact, I don't know it right now, but if you really care, I worked with one of his guys, and we mapped out as much of the Nazca lines as we could, and they go all the way up. They go way up north past Nazca, and there's a big bubble of area, and they show all the different pieces and components. And what I'm trying to do is actually tie them to a piece and work backwards, knowing what the system looks like and having the blueprints to show that this is the blueprints for the thing. And they'll show us. What I'm begging for is to actually get the true map out of this area, the area in the areas that we damaged, the area up here, because there's another gate here. You have the gate where it comes in at the higher elevation, right behind this edge here, from the high point to about right there. And then there's what we damaged is a gate down here, because the other problem is, parts of what I'm going to call the Nazca lines, but like I say, they expand all the way up the whole South America area, is that we're building cities in the middle of them, and highways and stuff like that, and people don't know what they're building on top of. And so it's kind of like a race for time, and just as we destroy part of it, we've destroyed part of the blueprints. But the majority of it is there enough that if people actually look at it, they'll go like, oh my God, there's more to this story. Because there's more to the story. So there's another gate that comes down and bubbles out, which will keep both the gas, it'll keep both the gas, the pressure, and the liquids as a gate to get out of the system. And I'm going to tell you what pressures they add over there in the big picture of how this whole thing is floated affects what happens in the next structures. So that is this system. Heavy pressure, light pressure, raising the water table a bit artificially. But I think even though we raise the water table of light water, it could be that the other liquid, the heavy water, and I'm not an expert here, the heavy water may not be affected in the same way because it's dealing as pressures as a total, not just as its surface tension. Because I don't know if it knows the surface tension as much as it knows the overall average, which is what this is working with, is the overall average. The overall average of pressure keeps this from escaping, because heavy water has this feature they like to call creep. It likes to call creep. That's probably what this tail does, is catch any creep and dumps it back in, so it's not... Well, and like I said, I'd like to model it and let us see what nature does, because you will see that this is, no matter what you do, this is intelligently designed. They knew more than we did in the 1940s, 1920s. When did we discover heavy water? All right. Now I'm running out of time because I got to be somewhere. But if you hear and understand me, oh, did I get to the switch here? The water level comes up, pools into that second pool. But the pool on top will be able to spill in and spill out. So when it reaches the ultimate level, whatever liquid that is, will spill down and spill out. And it'll have the gate of this liquid, because when this liquid is completely saturated, it'll drop that. So this liquid won't be able to spill down and out, and it'll start filling up. So there are gates within here, locks within there to, it would be easier if I did this in 3D and showed you, but you can maintain whatever liquid is sandwiched in the middle. It cannot go above a certain barrier. You know, it is going to be a byproduct liquid. You have a liquid on top that they like, the byproduct liquid that they vent out, the heavy liquid here that they vent out when it's done, it served its course, and the heavy liquid down here that they vent out when it served its course, and the lightest liquid, once it reaches its top level, it spits out. And why I said there's a tube there, I think, because when this has a suction power and it wants to lift, it needs to pull the whole system there. It doesn't want to crack anything, so there has to be a relief. And when it does that, it's pulling from the well in here instead of from the light water. So it wants to pull from the heavy water, but it wants to, I'm assuming, wants to pull from the waste heavy water. But it'll just, you know, whenever there is that suction, it'll have enough oomph, the surface tension, like a straw, to spit that back just up into this area. So that's like your pressure relief. When when enough reactions happen simultaneously that it just needs to lift and it doesn't, you know, it's not going to give, that little straw is like a little relief straw. And or maybe it adds just a little mix into it. You know, we do have that pressure pump happening. Maybe every now and then that spits out just by from what the pressure pump is doing. It's just like little ding ding twinch, ding 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 twinch. You know, there is a rhythm to this as it's doing its whole thing. Like Kevin says, the heartbeat of the pyramid. Okay, well, it keeps it churning. It's mostly settled, happening, dripping. There's a lot of things happening, but it's not like moving parts swinging around. There's a lot of water droplets coming down. Every now and then a burst from the Lord Kelvin thing we talked about up here. Okay, bursting stuff out, pushing the atmosphere, the whole, all the water droplets and energy within the system down into the system. And from there, playing with it. So, you know, if nothing else, that's going to be a pretty dangerous model. Try not to make that in high school without your teacher's permission, otherwise you're going to blow up the backyard. And I don't know what we're going to do about simulating hydrogen, but it'll be fun. Okay? Okay, that's my model. It's my model. I'm working with it here. Have a good day.